I met a gypsy.
I think when you're talking about like your struggles with addiction, like when you look at the thrill you can get from risk taking, like I mean, there's just taking drugs. It's like risky, but it's crazy fun.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like that's the same type of people that can throw themselves off a cliff and consider that to be fun are also the same type of people that can like really push, like go deep when it comes to drugs and and it's fucking
100%.
crazy enjoyable. And there's also like an element of like bonding that happens with people that you do
That can go the distance.
that go
and
deep
hard.
with you into like it's unfortunately very similar to extreme sports, and that's why I think you see a lot of extreme athletes have problems with drugs and alcohol.
Right. The average person, your average accountant or individual is not going to jump off a cliff. And that same person's not going to do a tab of acid or snort a rail of cocaine or do something that's taboo and kind of risky. The person who will jump off a cliff on a bike or a snowboard or a set of skis or drop into a vert skate ramp with no helmet, that kind of person is more likely to do something that's risky, taking drugs too. And the rush you get and the feeling and the inherent risk, they're going to be like, I got this.
Yeah.
It's that kind of person for sure that does it.
So you've been 15 years sober?
I'll be 16 years sober on December 17th.
So what was the last thing you ever did?
The last thing I ever did for drugs was at a friend of mine who actually made all the covers for the Kranked movies and did a bunch of the graphics of the Ghost Rider and whatnot, Stu Mackay Smith. It was his 40th birthday. And I went there and I'd gone to rehab and had been sober for 7 months and 3 months and whatnot. But at this particular night, I got drunk and I did it. I got some cocaine and I smoked it and I freaking went for it. And my wife, she's my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And was like, okay, we have a baby. You did this. That's 3 strikes. You're out. She's like, you're an awesome guy.
Yeah.
But this is...
Yeah, I don't want this.
This is your problem, not my problem.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? She's like, we're done. Like, I'm going to raise this baby with someone else. And we're done. And so that was the rock bottom moment for me where I was like, no one's raising my baby but me. Like, I'm blowing it. I am blowing it. I'm done. Like, I can't do this. I don't want anyone to raise my baby but me.
Yeah.
And I just said to her, I go, listen, if you give me one more chance, I'll quit drinking and I'll never do that shit again.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'll give you one more chance. You ever do that shit again, I'm gone. Look me in the eyes. You do that shit again, I'm going to walk and I'm never coming back.
Yeah.
And I went, okay. And that was December 17th, 2008. That's the last time I ever drank alcohol and the last time I ever did hard drugs.
So did you, sorry if there's too much to talk about. It's just...
It's all good. I want to put it out there because it might help somebody.
Yeah.
Someone who has a problem. If you got a problem, you can work on it.
Yeah.
And a lot more people have problems than we know.
Oh,
so
dude, for sure.
I want to be transparent about it.
Yeah.
And I'm not proud of those times. It's like a nightmare. Like, I was a professional mountain biker. I was a professional snowboarder. I was an athlete. My dad was a teacher. My mom was a nurse. I'm embarrassed that I was a drug addict.
Yeah.
Like, I was a street person. In the end, I lost 50 pounds of muscle. I was like all cheekbones and a crack back and ribs. Like,
yeah, like it was...
I didn't sleep for 10 days once.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing. But at the same time, if it helps somebody by me talking about it, I want to be that guy that helps them. And I actually get messages from people that are going, dude, I'm 6 years sober, or I'm 3 years sober, or thank you for sharing your story. It's helped me.
Well, we just had Jason Ellis on the podcast.
Yeah.
And we spoke a bunch about it. And I think too, like, there's like levels of drug addiction too.
Yeah,
and
people who can function doing it.
Yeah.
And then people who just lose the plot and just go all in.
Yeah, and there's also like, like people that they smoke weed every day, and then it's like there's levels to how it affects your life, or there's like they drink, or they just go on and doing coke with the boys. But there's like it's a problem if you can't not do it.
Yeah.
It might not be ruining your
I have a drug
life.
problem. I don't have any drugs.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that it's not like you have to just be like a full blown fucking drunk junkie on the streets to
be a drug addict.
To be like, I kind of have a problem, and maybe there's maybe I should look at this as a thing that I do.
Right.
It's like it just doesn't have to go that far. But I think when you can hear stories from someone where it has gone that far, it's sort of, I don't know, I think it does help people, I remember, dude, cocaine is fucking bad where I live on the Gold Coast. Well, like in Australia on the Gold Coast. So like we grew up in Cairns, super small town, and all of my, like from 14 to 18 when I left town, it was just acid, fucking ecstasy, like just every weekend, every kid, it was fucking crazy. When I look back at it now, I stayed away from like a lot of it in the early years. But man, I had friends that we would be taking to hospital and just dropping them off in the front of the emergency because they're fucking ODing, guys getting hit in the head with baseball bats because people were trying to steal a bag of 1,000 pills.
I got a story about that.
Fuck. Like it wasn't cool,
It's a gnarly world.
But it felt fucking normal, bro.
Well, because it's all around you, and it becomes normal because...
And then your best friends that you grew up with from 7, 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah. It's a weird scene because like it just seems so ghetto to me. And then when I started doing it, and I slowly started sliding down
into
this world. And, I was always around mountain bikers and snowboarders, and everyone's pretty friendly. Everyone's pretty cool. Everyone wants to help each other. You're in that world. You're out for yourself. And people are conniving and desperate. And there's people in different hierarchies of the criminal underworld that are involved in it. You've got your big bosses, and then you've got your, like, dealers and distributors, and then you've got your people on the street. And then there's also the sex trade, which gets involved in it. And then the stolen goods and people trading stuff, and like there's all this criminal underworld that I never knew anything about. I was like a sporty guy, and but at the same time it was kind of gnarly, but it's
weirdly fun
because it was like stepping into a movie. Yeah, it's like you're in like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, or some like gangster movie. You're dealing with gangsters and dealers and boosters and pimps, and like there's just like it's fucked. It's like, and then it's
that same adrenaline.
It's the same adrenaline.
Very
similar. Right. Yeah, I got over my head in a bunch of situations because I wasn't really street smart yet.
And you were like a fun, happy-go-lucky,
happy guy. I was like a fun drug addict. Yeah. And people would actually give me drugs because I was entertaining. Yeah. You know, and I started, with a lot of money. Like
that's probably another reason why people were pretty stoked to be around you too.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I was generous with it, and then I wanted to party. And I was also getting over a relationship, and I never really did it. And so it was new to me. Like I was in my 30s, I never did it. I had a bunch of money, I tried it, just snorting lines and stuff. And then, I didn't even think I would do that, but I had a crazy rampage that happened, and I came back and had a breakup, and then it just slowly slid into it. Like I would start, and I would try it. Like the CD case would go by at my friend's place on the res, and they knew I never did that, so it would just always go by me, and I would smoke joints, and that was about it. And then one day after this breakup, I grabbed the CD case as I went by, and I pulled in, and I was like, and I did a line, and I was like, I feel pretty happy. Yeah. And then that was like, and then I didn't do it again for 2 weeks, and then I did it again in a week, and then I did it again, and then I didn't want to be a moot, so I went and bought some. I found some where I could buy some, and that was the beginning of the end, because then I knew where to get it, and before I knew it, I was doing it all the time, and going hard and staying up for days, but having fun and still going to the bar and um, I still had a career riding and it just slowly just degraded into um, full blown addiction where eventually I lost every single sponsor because I wasn't going to shoots. I was blowing it.
And people know.
And people know I was losing weight.
Yeah.
And it was obvious. And it got ghetto pretty fast. And and at one point I couldn't find any powder. So I was just like, fuck it. Give me some of that. And I fucking got some rock and fucking blasted that. And that felt like doing 20 lines all at once. And I never, ever thought I would do that. Like, I came from a good family. I was a professional athlete. I never thought I would do that. And it got me hard. And slowly but surely, like, I just degraded until I was like, I lost every sponsor. I lost my truck. I didn't want to see my parents.
Yeah.
Who were looking for me all the time.
Because you're embarrassed the whole time.
I was embarrassed.
Sure. Yeah.
Totally embarrassed.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see my friends from the mountain bike world. I didn't want to see my friends from the snowboard world. I didn't want to see my friends from the TV world. I was like, and I would go buy some and I would park 2 blocks away and I'd have a hood on and sunglasses and I'd go get it, and then I would leave, and didn't want to see anybody and talk to anybody. And then next thing I knew, it was a few years later and I'm walking down the street with a pipe. I don't give a fuck. And I was like all skinny and shit. And, and then eventually I had no money. And so then I was like literally on the street. Like I had no home. I was homeless. And I, would like eat out of garbage cans. Like I was starving. I was dying out there. And, someone in a restaurant would leave their plates and they'd before the busser would come in, I would get in there and I'd get some food to survive. Like, super ghetto and
just like out of character. Like just not who you
it's
are.
not who I was. It changed me.
Yeah.
It changed me. And, I'm usually very happy and cracking jokes and stuff. And I was like
dark.
Yeah, it was dark. And I remember I was doing a delivery for a bit of product and the bicycles that you use would get jacked all the time. They were just a commodity that just went. And
yeah.
I used this one bike that had no tire on it and it had a flat spot on the rim and no one would ever take it because it had no tire. And they're just like, you can't ride that. And so I was just like riding that and I'm riding along the road and this F-350 went by with some mountain bike kids and they're like, Tippie! And I look at them and I see the reflection in the window of the truck as I'm riding there, and I got shaggy hair, I'm unshaven, I'm super skinny, a big head. I look like a dirty Q-tip. And I'm riding this bike with no tire on it, with a flat spot, ka-dunk, 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 and I'm riding down the road. And I'm like, I had this little epiphany, like, what am I doing? That was me. That reflection was me. And then, like, there was a few times I had epiphanies, and speaking of baseball bat fights, I had this gnarly moment where I was out of money. I'm in a shack, and there was this Montreal gangster who gave me his card and his cell phone to go get some money, come back with $100, and then he'd buy some product and he'd give me a little bit. So I went and did that 3 or 4 times. And then the last time that I went, a dealer was like, hey, if you give me that $100, I'm going to reload. I will give you the $100 in product plus a bit more extra for yourself because you're helping me out. I'm like, I got to be back quick. This is a gnarly dude. And he's like, it'll be quick. And I'm like, okay. So I gave him the $100 instead of bringing it back right away. And then he went and he reloaded. And then he had to go somewhere to cook it up. And he started falling asleep. And there was all these drug addicts that were going to attack him. So I'm guarding him. And they're all ready to rob him. And then he wakes up and he sees what's kind of going on. And he grabs everything and runs out the door and jumps in a vehicle and is gone. And I'm running after him going, I need the $100. Holy shit. And so I went to another place. I got another $100. And then while he was like weighing the product out, a girl showed up and the dealer and her were kind of flirting. And the girlfriend of the dealer came running in the room with bear spray and bear sprayed everybody. And the girl, who's a working girl, grabbed the product and the money and ran out the door with it. And we're all like bear sprayed. Now I'm out $200. And I know this Montreal gangster is going to kill me. And so I'm like, okay, I need to fix this. And so I didn't want to take any more money out. Like everything's getting chaotic and getting bad. So I went to a friend's place who would hook me up with some weed that I could trade for some product and come back and then square it all up. And so I went there and he wasn't home. I'm waiting for him and I fell asleep. I've been up for days and I woke up the next afternoon.
No.
And I'm like, I still had his card and I still had his phone. And I'm like, okay, good.
Oh, no way.
Still had it, didn't get robbed while I fell asleep. And I go over to the last place I saw him, to the shack, and I bang on the door and the little slider opens up. Shh, shh, door opens, come in. All of a sudden they grab me and they're like, we got him. They figured I ripped him off. And that gangster was gone, but they had, the alert was out for me that I was out there and that I'd ripped this guy off, and I didn't. And they're like, give me his card. Give me his phone. Give it to me now. And I'm like, I'm not giving you shit. And he's like, give it to me now. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. Because the dealer that was there when I was there had been taken over by this dealer, and they always take off these shacks, get taken over, and whoever's got money and product, and or they just muscle their way in or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. I'm not giving you shit. And he goes, what happened? And I told him what happened. He's like, fucking bullshit. And I'm like, no, that's what happened. And he's like, give me his shit. I'm like, I'm not giving you shit. I don't know who you are. He's the guy that gave it to me. I'll give it to him. This is the last place I saw him. And I came back here to give it to him in person. And then he storms out of there, and he was waving his knife around. And I'm like, what are you going to do, stab me? And he's like, fuck you. And then he walks out of the room, and then the bouncer, the doorman, is standing there, big, gnarly dude. He's like, you should give it to him, man. And I'm like, oh, would you give someone to a stranger that's on someone else's card to a drug dealer? Would you do that? Would you get? I came here to the last place. All of a sudden, I got smoked in the head, and I stepped forward, and I saw stars. Seen stars lots of times.
Yeah.
And the stars were there, and then they went, and they're gone. And I turned around, and the guy had just baseball batted me in the back of the head.
No way.
And I'm like, I was trying to think of something clever and funny to say, and I just went, if you're gonna hit me, hit me from the front, you fucking coward. So he runs in to hit me again with a baseball bat. I step in and I block it on the handle before he gets a good swing, and get the fulcrum of the bat coming down. I block him on the handle. I run him into the wall. I keep the legs going football style. I run him down the hall. He falls in the closet. I take the baseball bat. I'm choking him with the baseball bat. And then the bouncer comes running down the hall, this big gnarly dude, and then he goes to grab me. I let him grab me. And as soon as he goes for the commitment twist, because it was so easy, as soon as he went for the commitment twist, I just took his head and just slammed his head into his head. And I just took and I grabbed him by the hair, and I started clunking their skulls together. Clunk, 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 clunk. They're all welted up. They're fucked. They're all bloody. Meanwhile, the blood is coming down from this wound. I should have got like 10 or 12 stitches in the back of my head.
No way.
And the blood's coming down and spiraling off my nose, and they're covered in my blood and their blood. And the bouncer from the front door comes running down the hall. And I just look at him. I'm going, clunk, 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 clunk. And he comes down the hall, and I go, Arr! And he's like, whoa.
This is too much.
He's out of there. So he leaves. All the drug addicts lock the doors after he leaves. Those guys get their shit together. They're up. They're all welted up and like, you're going to die. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. He's coming. The Montreal gangster guy, I forget his name, is coming. And I'm like, I'm right here. Meanwhile, they had a shower. They showered up, got all the blood off them. I had a shower. I'm sitting around waiting for this gangster to show up. And they're smoking, doing drugs. And I'm sitting there. I got nothing. I'm just waiting. And they're like, you need a toke? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, throws me a rock. I blast it. I'm sitting there doing drugs with the guy that just baseball batted me.
No way.
It's so weird. And then all of a sudden, they're like, oh, here he is. And he comes rushing in. He's got two dudes with him, gnarly dudes. They circle me. The guy's got me up against the wall, and he's got a knife in my ribs, a serrated steak knife. He's like, what happened? And I told him everything. Blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, okay, I know those guys. I checked with them. You're totally correlates. You're telling the truth. I had thousands of dollars in there. You could have robbed me blind. You took $200 out. They'll know those guys. Everything's going to be squared up. I can work with you. You want to talk? I'm like,
no way.
Sure. Puts his knife away. Then we're doing drugs again. I'm just sitting there going, whoa, this is crazy. So then they leave. I'm out of drugs again. I still don't have any money. All of a sudden, police, open up, police, open up. They come running in. I had set up the dealers with this little towel that had elastic surgical tubing to a hole in the ceiling that you pull the pins and everything gets sucked up into the ceiling and it's gone. And I got pieced out for that, for setting them up with a good thing. They pull the pins, the thing gets sucked up. The police come in, they can't find any drugs.
No way.
And they're looking for someone, they can't find the person they're looking for. They're leaving, all the cops leave. And the one cop, as he's walking out of the living room, that says to me and the other people there, as you were, you dirty drug addicts. And he walks out of the room and I go, we're not all this bunch of dirty drug addicts, you know. And he leans back in the room and he goes, oh yeah? What have you ever done with your life? I go, well, I was a BC All-Star football player. I was a World Cup snowboard racer. I cracked the top 10 in the World Cup. And I helped kickstart the freeride movement. And I used to jump the biggest cliffs in the world on mountain bikes. And I've been in 26 movies. And he's like, yeah, right. And I go, Google me. And he goes, what's your name? I go, Brett Tippie. And he goes, how do you spell it? And I tell him. And he leaves. Next thing I know, you know, that shot got taken over by another guy. He came in and kicked everyone out with no money with a hammer, you know. And so I left and then, you know, I went home and then slept. And then about 3 weeks later, I was on another run and I was like falling asleep, getting back from this suburb outside of town. And I was so dehydrated. I think I went to someone's hose to drink water. And then they called the cops because there was some homeless guy drinking water out of their hose. I was that homeless guy. And the cop shows up and took my pipe, stepped on it, put me in the drunk tank for 12 hours, which is air conditioned, no pillows, concrete bench, no blankets,
they
nothing.
suck.
I'm in my underwear.
Yeah.
And freezing for 12 hours. I get let out. They're giving me my street clothes back. And the cop goes, what are you doing in this world? And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, you don't belong in this world. This is not your world. And he goes, remember who you really are. And I'm like, excuse me? And he goes, I Googled you. And I was like, I look at him and it was the cop that I told Google.
Yeah, yeah.
And he spun the computer and there was like photos of me racing World Cup and jumping cliffs on my mountain bike. And he goes, that's who you really are. Don't forget that. Don't forget who you really are. And I was like, thanks, man. And he goes, when's the last time you ate? And I'm like, I don't know, 5 days ago or something. I don't know. I can't. I've lost track. And he's like, if I gave you $10, would you promise me not to spend it on drugs? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, here's $10. Get some food, kid. And remember who you really are. And I was like, okay. And so I went out and I bought food with it and kept me alive again, you know. And I ended up seeing this cop several times. I was in a stolen car once that I didn't know was stolen. And he pulled us out, a bunch of cops at gunpoint, you know. And then he would be like, the Cherry Creek apartments are getting hit. Don't be around there tonight. And then he just gave me some words of advice and become kind of a friend, you know?
Yeah.
And when I got sober and went to rehab and then got sober and met my wife and had kids and got a job and I was like healthy, I got a hold of him. I said, dude, I'm sober again. I'm sober. I've been sober for years. Everything is good. And he's like, that's awesome. I knew it. He goes, you know what? You changed the way I police. I just assumed everyone was a dirty drug addict and I just treated everyone the same.
Yeah.
When I met you, I realized that not everyone's the same. Some people are just there for the weekend. Some people are trying it for the first time. Some people are lifers. I just assumed everyone was just a full dirty drug addict. And I'm a sergeant now, and I have taught what you taught me to all of my staff, and we changed the way we police now.
Yeah.
And we treat everyone with much more respect and humanity, and knowing that everyone's got a story, and that everyone, you know, someone changed those people's diapers at one point and taught them how to read and et cetera, and that everyone's a real person. And I want to thank you for that. And I was like, wow, you're welcome and thank you. And he said, you know what, my nephew's getting into that. Would you come and have a cup of coffee with us next time you're in Kamloops? And I'm like, yeah. And so I called him up and I went and had, you know, a cup of coffee with his nephew and he was just trying it. And I just went, you know what, I just thought I'd try rail once. And I was a pro athlete. I never thought I would go down that road ever. And it can happen real easy. It's a slippery slope, and it's taken many a good person down, and it can take anybody down, and it can take you down. Even though you think you're different, it can get you. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? I thought I would step over the line, and I've said this in other podcasts and other interviews and stuff. This is one that really made sense to me. I go, you know what, dude? You think you can step over the line and check it out and come back? That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to check out the dark side. I wanted to see what it was about, then step back to myself. What I didn't realize is that when you step over that line and experience it, even though if you have a strong willpower to step back, the willpower of your dark side is just as strong as yours.
Yeah.
And then you have this internal battle that you're going to have to fight forever. If you don't know, you don't ever know. And so be careful stepping over that line, because you're going to wake up your dark side, and he's just as strong as you are. And he's just sitting there like this, like, I scared him straight. And so it worked out, and he said that he got his shit together. But yeah, and this cop had a bit of an epiphany there. He helped, I don't know if he helped save me, but he definitely gave me a little...
Played a part,
a little wake-up call. My dad never stopped looking for me. My dad was... I was very close with my dad, and he never stopped looking for me. Big dude, 6'1", 280 pounds, but gentle as a lamb, school teacher, artist, but he would come looking for me and would bring me water and fresh socks and would try to get me to come home. Sometimes I'd go, sometimes I wouldn't. And he got to know all these gnarly people, and they all loved him because he was like so relatable and
just a nice guy.
Nice guy, and everyone loved him. And then all these drug addicts were like, you should go home with your dad. Like, what are you doing here with us? I don't have anyone that loves me. You have someone who loves you. Why are you here? Go. And he never stopped looking for me. And my mom, they would always had hope for me. And my mom was like, I know you'll come back to being yourself, and you'll hold your head high, proud again. And a friend of mine, Greg Salmon, who I was on the national team with, gave me a job doing construction, let me stay in his house. I was like a dirty crackhead. He let me stay in his house, drove me to work every day, and back home, and I kind of just grabbed onto eating, sleeping,
just
working,
tried to be normal.
Trying to be normal.
Yeah.
And it worked. So props to my buddy Greg Salmon. And Darren Bearclaw got me a bike to ride.
Sick.
That, kick-start my love of bike riding again. And Geordie Lunn at one point, I'd spent like months at my parents' house in the basement. I said, lock me in the basement and don't let me out. And I went to rehab, and I fucked up in rehab. 60-day program, I made it 40 days before I went and picked up. And I was...
what was the hardest part about it? Like trying to get clean?
Oh, it's just it coming out of the blue. It just gets you, and you're... It's like being possessed by yourself. And so I was clean for a long time. And I remember at one point I ran into an NHL hockey player. He said, hey, you want to go do a few zippers outside? Come with me. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And then Geordie Lunn showed up. And Geordie Lunn was like, seeing what's going on. And he's like, no, don't do it. And he looks at the guy. And he looks at this big hockey player. And he's like, beat it. And, gnarly Geordie Lunn looked. This guy was like, oh, so he beat it. And I didn't do it. And he's like, do you don't want to do that? And then that moment saved me. Like, it was one of those moments. And because the next day I met my wife, and I was like,
no.
Yeah. And if I had been
Bro,
off on a
if
run,
you did that,
I wouldn't have met her.
No way would you. No way.
Yeah. She was probably the biggest thing that helped me get over it.
Yeah.
And because she is such a strong character, and it was so loving. And I was at the Whistler Bike Park. It was at Crankworks. I wanted to see everyone again. I'd been sober for a few months.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.